Here's a guy that you and I both love talking about that you put on your list. Devon Dampier, formerly hailing from New Mexico, heading over to Utah to be quarterback there, following his offensive coordinator, Jason Beck. CD, take the floor. Why is Devon Dampier a guy that we have to look out for in 2025?
Well, first of all, he's coming over with his offense coordinator, Jason Beck. That's why we love this, right? That's what when we talked about that being an underrated get, for Kyle Whittingham, right, and for Utah. Obviously, that offense the past couple years has not been up to standard. It just has not, and part of that was due to poor quarterback play. We think Devin Dampier is going to be a guy to fix that. If you are not familiar with his game, right, he is super electric to watch. He was super frisky for a not a crazy talented team in New Mexico, and obviously Jason Beck got the best out of him at offense coordinator there, with Bronco Mendenhall. So that was a lot of fun. He's really interesting. So last year, going to go through some stats here. These stats, they won't necessarily like super wow you, but it's definitely, I think, like worth mentioning in terms of what he did. Like the eye test just matters. So he passed for 2,700 yards last year, 58% completion percentage, rounding up there. 12 touchdowns to 12 interception ratio is not great. Absolutely not. We understand that. But it's also, you have to understand, he's playing at New Mexico with New Mexico talent and all that kind of stuff. So you'll think he'll get better production from a very good offensive line in Utah this season. So obviously he's got to cut back on that ratio there. He only took 5 sacks though, so that was pretty impressive, and that has to do a lot with his escapability. And plus, what he does on the ground is really impressive. It was 1,100 yards on the ground, 19 touchdowns. Holy cow! Yeah, sign me up for that if you're Utah and Kyle Whittingham. Utah fans, you got a good one in Devin Dampier. And by the way, too, like maybe he didn't get the big time love in terms of like when you were talking about the highest rated transfer portal quarterbacks, guys that are, which by the way, the transfer portal, like those 24/7 rankings and rivals, those are about draft picks and like what these guys will be in a couple years coming out of school, or maybe a year or two and going to the NFL. Like the reason why Devin Dampier is not rated super high is because he's 5'10", 198. So like that's part of it. It doesn't make him a worse quarterback. We've seen plenty of college quarterbacks have plenty of success being that small in stature, especially if you know how to avoid hits, which he does, especially if you know how to move around in the pocket, which he does. And if you put an offensive system around him, like Jason Beck has in the past, good things will happen for Utah. And that's something that we're obviously super excited about.
And I think you underplayed almost like the offensive line that Utah's going to have. Like this is going to be a potentially top 10, potentially top 5 group, and relative to the schedule that they're playing, like they're right in the mix for teams that can make the college football playoffs. A lot in part to do, even with all of these skill position transfers that they're going to have. Like this offensive line can do a lot of work. And when you're small like that, like you said, getting interior pressure on a short quarterback is trouble, right? But you got some anchors there on the interior, right? You have some absolute anchors. You love guys like Comp, uh, and then your tackles are pretty nuts. Fanu and Lomu, I mean, both NFL draft prospects as we speak. So yeah, I'm in love with the offensive coordinator quarterback relationship the same way that you are. And even though he's a little bit undersized, I'm with you. Devin Dampier's a guy that we should be watching in 2025.